Hello, my name is Tom Dinas, and I'm the creator of the Delicious Legacy podcast. Join me to time travel together through food to explore archaeogastronomical mysteries, unknown herbs, and long-lost recipes. I will take you to the lavish feasts of ancient Greece, all the way through to ancient China, and in the kitchens of kings in medieval Europe. Who made the first cheese and why? How beer was made? What is garum, silphium, and can I find these now? Through the accounts of ancient writers and talking to experts over dinner, we find out. So, subscribe or follow now wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Google and Spotify, and listen for free at the Delicious Legacy podcast.
Welcome to The Partial Historians.
We explore all the details of ancient Rome.
Everything from the political scandals, the love affairs, the battles waged, and when citizens turn against each other. I'm Dr. Rad.
And I'm Dr. G. We consider Rome as the Romans saw it, by reading different authors from the ancient past and comparing their stories.
Join us as we trace the journey of Rome from the founding of the city.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of The Partial Historians. I am Dr. G.
And I am Dr. Rad.
Looking fabulous as usual.
Oh, you always give me such nice compliments, and I always forget to give you compliments. I think it's just because you're just so naturally beautiful. I don't think I need to say it. The camera can see you this time, so they can see it's true.
Oh, God. So we have been tracing Rome's history from the foundation of the city.
That we have. And
it's been a wild ride so far. Mm-hmm. And it's only going to get worse, I think. We're entering into this period.
Wait. We promised at the end of the previous episode that it was going to be better.
Oh, look, I can't make any guarantees about what I may or may not have promised at the end of the last episode. I don't know. We're entering into this period where we're going to see more and more dictators. Ooh. So I think, we've seen some already, but just you wait. You ain't seen nothing yet. Yeah, we're heading down that kind of path.
Definitely. So to do a quick recap, Dr. G, of where we're at in this journey of Rome from the founding of the city, deep in the Roman Republic that we are, we just covered the year 436. And in 436, we saw quite a few things happening in my account. Saw a little bit of raiding happening, but nothing too serious on the military front. And then you had some detail about some of the domestic occurrences that were going on.
I did, but I mean, my sources are pretty thin on the ground right now, and I feel like I'm not really building any sort of narrative momentum myself in sort of understanding what's happening in this period. And it's partly because my great friend, my solace in hard times, Dionysius of Halicarnassus, is missing.
Well, certainly what we saw in the bits that you put together and the bits that I had from Livy was that there is seemingly another tribune of the plebs called Spurius Maelius, who's trying to seek vengeance, or in his words, justice, against the men who were involved in either murdering or triggering the murder of the original Spurius Maelius.
I think it's far more likely that Spurius Maelius came back from the dead.
We'll let the audience decide. But anyway, and so he seems to have been going after Ahala, or at least Ahala's property, because Ahala, of course, is in exile, and then also Minucius, who was the prefect of the grain, who reported Maelius's supposed treachery. Doesn't get very far, though, I don't think, because even though he's got the name, a pestilence breaks out. And also, I don't think people were digging his whole vibe.
Yeah, which is weird. I feel like the narrative is not making a lot of sense right now.
Look, I think it just goes to show that it is not the case that arose by any other name.
Oh. Well, thank you, Shakespeare.
All right. Anywho, so yeah, there's, a few things happening. Definitely the plague, I think, is the most significant in 436, but I feel safe now saying that we can delve into 435.
We have some consuls. We have Gaius Julius,
Okay, yes.
grandson of, Ulus, question mark. So much is unknown. A patrician. Consul for the second time. Previously consul in 447.
Definitely. So fairly recent.
Fairly recent.
Yeah.
Doesn't stand out in my memory as significant,
That
so
was-
maybe I've forgotten something.
No, that was that time period right after the fall of the Second Decemvirate when it was kind of a bit like bleh, like there wasn't a lot of detail. Yeah.
Okay, phew.
Yeah.
And we also have Lucius, or Proculus, Virginius, grandson of, Tricostus.
Also a patrician. I
Also a
think.
patrician.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Ooh. We're
But
gonna have some other magistrates though this year, aren't we, Dr. G?
We are. We are going to have some censors. So we're going to have Gaius Furius,
Nice. The return of the Furii.
Paculus Fusus, patrician, previously consul in 441, and Marcus Gaganius, son of Marcus, Massarinus.
Definitely
patrician.
heard that name before.
Yes, consul many times. 447, so with old mate Ulus up there. 443.
Yep.
And 437. So only like a couple of years ago, apparently.
Yeah. Made such an impression.
But wait, things get out of hand this year. Who knew? There's going to be a dictator.
Wow. Sorry, I'm underwhelmed. We've had so
Yeah.
many dictators
I
recently.
was going to say, you're not really giving that the... Quintius Servilius, son of Publius, grandson of Spurius Priscus Fidenas. Patrician.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
The guy who captures Fidenae.
Yes, and we've also, if you've got a dictator, then you know you've also got to have a master of the horse.
Everybody's got to be in charge of horses, don't they?
Yeah.
Postumus Abutius, Helva Cornican. Sounds like he has corns. I hope that's not true for him.
There are so many Roman names which have medical connotations for me, but that's probably because they come from Latin.
Yes. The infiltration of Latin into Western medicine.
Yeah.
Consul of 442. So a lot of people that we've seen before in various guises now back for some action. And I'm really excited for what you're going to tell me about this year because I have almost literally nothing else but this list of names.
Nice. Well, look, I'm not going to lie. This is the period I think that's probably the murkiest I've ever seen. Big call, I know. But wait, it's because there does seem to be a lot of blending of years in Livy's account. I don't think it's quite as clear cut as it usually is. So to be honest, are we in 435? I mean, yes.
This is why I keep saying I think Spurius Maelius could have just come back from the dead. Because we don't know what's happening with this chronology right now.
This is true. The chronology is all shut to hell. I am dividing them up into 436 and 435, but it's probably slightly arbitrary. I don't know. There seems to be a lot of blending going on here. Certainly, I think with the whole plague situation, this might be part of the problems. After all, Livy himself said it's a problematic period in that last episode that when we talked a lot about his source material.
And it's troublesome. I mean, if everybody's sick, who's going to be writing up the fasty? And we're like, no, guys, I've got to take leave.
It's a good question. So anyway, so we've got our consuls to start off the year, obviously. So we've got our Gaius Julius and we've got our Lucius Virginius as consuls. The people of Rome are terrified, so they've got a really big job on their hands. Now, as often happens when you've got domestic problems of this magnitude, nobody's super concerned about campaigning outside of Roman territory at this point in time. Now, you may wonder, why am I saying that? Well, that's because we've been dealing with these issues with the Etruscans for the last couple of years, and this question mark over the loyalties of a Roman colony, Fidenae. So I'm mentioning it in the sense that this is a time where that all takes a back burner in the face of,
Illness.
Yeah, exactly. So both the patricians and the plebeians are happy that is a peaceful time in Rome because they've got just, so much to deal with. Yeah. However, the people from Fidenae decide it's time to make a move.
They don't have the plague.
Well, I mean...
Not yet.
Let's just hang on a second. It is an infectious disease. So there have been some people from Fidenae who are all holed up in their, in the mountains, hiding behind their city walls and that sort of thing. They decide, clearly this is a prime time to start pillaging Roman territory because the Romans are just, keeping to themselves, isolating. Maybe.
Socially distant.
Yeah. Anyway, and so they summon some people from Veii to, help them out.
Oh, yeah, they're new allies.
Yeah. Exactly. Anyway, the Faliscans are not really interested in restarting the war at this point in time. Now, they have been involved as allies in this conflict up until this point. We've mentioned them briefly.
I have some details on the Faliscans.
Okay. Because I must admit, I really like their name, Faliscans.
Yeah, it is nice. It rolls off the tongue nicely.
Yeah, sounds so classy.
Well, apparently, the Faliscans are a distinct people.
I think so. Yeah. No, I think so.
So they don't consider themselves to be Latin, and they don't consider themselves to be Etruscan.
Interesting.
So they are from northern Latium, so like geographically speaking, southern Etruria. So they're kind of on this really sort of hazy borderline between these two regions.
Yeah.
But they actually have a language which is separate from both.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So they have a capital city, which is thought to be on a tuff spur. So tuff is a type of stone.
Right.
On the eastern Monte Cimini. So for those who are like, wait a minute, let me get out my Italian maps. And sitting between two tributaries of the Tiber, the Vicano and the Fosso Maggiore. Or Maggiore, I should say. Get my Italian correct.
Yeah.
And so this is also known as the Etruscan side of the Tiber. So they're right on this sort of river edge as well. They have a tradition that they're founded by an Argive hero. Ooh. So a Greek comes over, a guy called Haulesus. And this is a story that Ovid tells us in the Fasti. And they also have a competing tradition that they have a Chalcidian foundation.
Okay.
So different Greeks.
Yeah. I was going to say, isn't that still Greek?
And despite the fact that their language is separate and distinct, it is considered a dialect connected mostly to Latin.
Okay.
Rather than Etruscan.
I'm suspicious because they're founded by Greeks. Why they speak Latin?
I mean, one should be suspicious. And the Faliscans throw in their lot with Veii.
Yes.
And then Fidenae, as that evolves.
They are but one at this point in time.
Yeah.
In many ways. But anyway. But at this point in time, they're not interested in taking part in any war, according to Livy. Even though their allies are like, please, we really could use that. Or also the fact that I think everybody knows that Rome is experiencing this pestilence. So even though they seem like the weak member of the herd, the Faliscans not having it. Okay, so as a result, it is just the people of Veii and Fidenae that end up crossing over the Anio River and setting up their standards near the Colline Gate, which is one of the gates of Rome. Because it is surrounded by a wall.
It is surrounded by the wall. The
Yeah.
Colline Gate is, if you're in Rome today, it's near Termini Station.
Yes.
It's also where the Vestal Virgins get buried.
And it's also where Crassus, the guy who defeats Spartacus, has one of his most notable military successes. Random facts.
It's, famous gates. That's the sort of quality content we're bringing to this Roman table.
Come on in. Anyway, so of course, the people of Rome are now freaking out because...
People are at the gates of Rome and they're like, you know what? I haven't been able to control my bowel for weeks.
Exactly.
I'm not up to a battlefield confrontation.
Exactly. It's the last thing that you need when you have the plague, to have enemy camped right outside the gate. So as a result, Consul Julius, whatever, brings into action, starts placing troops along the ramparts and the walls of Rome. Okay.
Wow.
Meanwhile, the other consul, Verginius, is consulting with the Senate in the Temple of Quirinus, which I believe is on the Quirinal Hill, funnily enough.
Don't know.
I'm just going to say...
It sounds reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. All right, now, it's at this point in time, obviously, tough times. What do you need if you're in a tough time? A dictator.
Oh, a dictator. Yeah,
Yes.
it's time for a dictator. You know what would be good right now? Somebody to take charge.
Exactly, yes. So this is where we have Quintius Servilius, question marks around the rest of his name, being made dictator. Now, Verginius is feeling a little awkward at this point in time because his colleague is not there to consult about this suggestion. Okay, so he wants to discuss it, which is very sweet. And Julius gives his consent. Dictator is officially named, and he then gets to choose his master of the horse, his little lieutenant-y type person. And that is, of course, one Postumus Aebutius Helva, who is chosen. So, the dictator, Servilius, he also springs into action. There is no time to be lost. He orders everyone to assemble outside the Colline Gate at dawn.
Get there.
Yeah.
We will face the enemy directly.
Absolutely. Anyone who is capable of fighting needs to show up. Now,
Drag yourself out of bed. I don't care if you're green about the gills.
I was going to say, there are some question marks about the definition of this, because normally I would say that probably involves most of the men in the population that does
Yes.
it at this point in time.
Dear Marcia, I write to you from my sick bed where I've just
I thought
received the
your
order.
name was usually Lucretia.
Not in this case. Like, this guy, he's just stuck in the city.
Dear Lucretia, I write to you from my sick bed.
The
For
order.
I am too ill to fight.
The order has just come through that we must be at the gate if we're able to fight. But I can't fight. I can't even keep myself upright for any length of time. Will you go in my place, Lucretia? Will you fight for me?
No, you will not, because that would be an abomination.
Don't you dare emasculate me by going out there. You get back in it.
Even though I may be as sick as a little baby, you are not to fight under any circumstances. Anywho.
So rude.
Yeah. Anyway, so anyone who could fight is supposed to show up at this point in time. They remove the standards from the treasury and they are brought to the dictator. Mm-hmm. The enemy, I presume, notice that there is some activity in Rome itself and they withdraw to higher ground. Smart move. Always a good move in a military engagement to have the higher ground.
I have a detail
Yeah.
about the standards if you're interested.
Why, please do. Tell me about the standards.
Yeah, look. Frontinus in his Stratagems.
Okay.
Book 2, Section 8,
Yes.
subsections 8 to 9, on restoring morale by firmness.
I'm liking where this is going.
Yeah, I have so little to add to this year, but yet the standards is one of them.
Hey.
I will just read him out in full.
This is hard work
Yeah.
right here. Yeah.
The dictator, Servilius Priscus,
Yes.
having given the command to carry the standards of the legions against the hostile Faliscans, ordered the...
Wait. Whoa.
Whoa. Is it just the Fidenae who were there?
Faliscans? Yeah, I was going to say, they very emphatically said no.
And yet, I mean, these have this detail.
You know what, I think that
Do
probably...
the Fiscans come up later?
Yeah, no, they do.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I think this is showing the blending.
I retract
yeah.
my frontinus.
No.
I'll come back to him
Not
later.
Not at all. I would not put money on Livy. I think that this just goes to show like the blending that's happening. Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
All right, the standards of the legions
Yes.
to be brought against the hostile Faliscans.
Yeah.
Like, the removal of the standards out just put me in mind. And I was like, this is my time to shine. But maybe it's not.
No, join in.
But he does this and then immediately orders the standard bearer to be executed for hesitating to obey. So the first one is like, the what now? You really want me to go get the standards? He's like, kill that man. I'm the dictator. Kill that man.
Wow. Okay.
The rest, cowed by this example, advanced against the foe.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, that is your right as a dictator, is it not? Yeah, to just execute someone on sight. That's the whole point of having a dictator. They can make quick snap decisions, which is really helpful when someone's life is involved. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, somebody's life was involved.
All right, well, anywho. So... No, I'm sorry. Sorry,
Ouch.
Standard bearer. Not trying to
We
overlook.
weep for your loss.
Yeah, we really do. Anyway, Servilius starts marching his Roman forces to meet the enemy, and they end up meeting up near Nomentum. Not in Nomentum, near Nomentum. I say that because Nomentum has no part in this conflict. So I just want to make that very, very
Very
clear.
much not involved.
Yeah. It's also one of those interesting areas which is in Latium and apparently near the Sabine frontier, but it is Latin. Yeah.
Okay.
It has also been mentioned as being originally a colony of Alba.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
I'm also throwing those details in there. So it's also a colony of Alba along with your favourite named place, Crustumerium.
It is great.
And Fidenae, of all places. It's about 4 miles from the Tiber.
All right.
Anywho, so battle ensues with the Etruscans, and the Romans are appearing to be getting the upper hand because the Etruscans end up retreating. Servilius, dictator that he is, ends up pursuing the retreating foe, pushes them back into the city of Fidenae. The Romans then, of course, kick into siege mentality. I feel like we chose sound effect for
Siege
siege.
mentality.
Yeah, things moving very slowly. Where they surround Fidenae with a rampart, so obviously some kind of
Temporary fence.
defensive wall. Well, not defensive in this case.
Offensive.
More predatory.
I'm offended by that fence.
Exactly. But unfortunately, they are unable to capture the city using scaling ladders. Classic siege technique. Because Fidenae is apparently very well fortified. Yes.
You'd want to be after switching sides. I'd be like, I'm ditching the Romans for the Etruscans.
Forethought, yes.
Prepare the defences.
Well, funny you should say that actually, because there's another thing to their defences which is very impressive. They also aren't going to be able to starve them out because they had plenty of corn. They were very well prepared.
Oh.
Yeah,
Maybe
so-
that's why there was a grain shortage. Fidenae has been hoarding grain for years at this point, being like, we can hold out. I've still got some delicious something here.
Exactly. Got plenty of Doritos. They last forever. Even when they're stale, they still taste good.
Oh, look, you do what you got to do when you're hungry.
Exactly. Now, this is a bit of a pickle, and it causes Servilius to say, I'm reviewing the situation. That's a throwback to Oliver, in case any of you are fans of musical theatre. Anyway, he's very familiar with the region. He's got to rethink how everything is going. I mean, obviously, we're not far from Rome, so I think most people are pretty familiar with the region. It's not really like a kudos to him or anything like that. Anyway, but he decides that he's going to attack Fidenae on the farther side of the city, because in this particular area, the way that the city is positioned, I guess they felt when they were originally setting it up and setting up the defences that it didn't really need to have as strong defences because naturally it was kind of...
Got a natural defence
like it's
element to it.
Yeah, and it also, I guess, wouldn't be maybe the most logical place for any attacking armies to, launch their attack.
Well, we wouldn't want to accuse the Romans of logic now, would we?
So he decides that what he's going to do is another classic siege technique, which he's going to start to drive a mine into the citadel of Fidenae. So I gather from that what he's probably doing is he's digging under the fortifications.
I have a real problem with the idea that they're going to tunnel into somewhere.
Hey, they did it. They did it in castles.
Well, yeah, but this takes a long time. That you get to be dictator for 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how substantial are the walls we're talking about here. I mean, sure, it's well fortified for 435 BCE. What is that? What
does that even mean?
Yeah. I don't think we should envision a Lord of the Rings style castle at this point in time, which is very disappointing. But this is the kind of technique that they do use in this sort of warfare. I mean, even think of World War I, trenches. They were battles fought underground.
Yeah, I'm not completely against it. I'm just a bit I feel like logistically it's just not the greatest strategy at this point in history.
Wait, you haven't heard the whole plan. Okay, so Servilius also only dedicates part of his army to digging this.
Oh, well, that's good.
because the rest of the army is going to maintain the siege in an obvious place. Hey, look at us besieging you. Evil Romans. Mustache twirl. And so the people in the city are like, well, this is the attack. And so they're distracted.
That's the siege.
Exactly. They're distracted by that. And therefore, they had no idea that they were being attacked by this sneaky mine into their citadel until the city was already taken. Jeez. So you can have all the doubts that you like, but it worked.
According to Livy.
Hey.
All right.
He gets his information from Augustus Caesar, thank you very much. And that should be good enough for you or anyone. Anyway, so back in Rome, we seemingly forget about this. Yeah, forget about this very quickly. We're back to the censors.
Oh.
Yeah. So we've got our censors. This is apparently when they approve a public building, the Villa Publica. Okay. Which is set up in the Campus Martius, and it is in this year that the census was taken there for the first time. Now, I believe that this building, unfortunately, no longer remains. But we have a rough idea of what it looks like because it has appeared on some coins, I think.
Okay. So this Villa Publica is supposed to be the spot where the census is now conducted.
It is.
We're like, rock up to the Campus Martius to be counted.
Yeah.
This is
we need an official building. We need a wall.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Now, this is again one of those years where I'm like, is it the end of 435? Am I blending into 434? I don't really know. Yeah, I mean, I would say that this is where I would end 435.
Oh, okay. I do have some more details on this year, actually.
Please do.
It's going to seem a little bit odd, I think, but maybe it's in keeping with the fact that we're dealing with plague and pestilence.
Yeah.
But there is this idea that comes through in the scholarship, and I'm referring here to Wilson's 2021 book, Dictator, The Evolution of the Roman Dictator.
What a handy volume to have on.
It seems like the thing to read when we're heading into this kind of territory.
Yeah.
But he talks about Servilius Priscus, our dictator for this year, as somebody who may be a candidate for being in a slightly religious position as dictator as well.
Okay.
There's this idea of a nail-driving dictator. And you might be like, what?
He drives the nails into the walls of the temple, right?
Yeah. So driving some nails into...
I thought that was my hearing. I was like, oh, what?
The who nail? And so this is a thing that is attested in certain cases. This idea of... I'm going to quote a little passage from Livy.
Ooh,
I know.
how dare you.
The Senate ordered that a dictator be named on account of there being a need for driving a nail.
Okay.
And this crops up later as well.
Right.
But it's thought that potentially this idea of the nail driving ritual, pushing it into the door of the temple, is something that might be of Etruscan origin.
Right. Wait, which temple is this?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, like this is a detail that I haven't pursued in its absolute form.
No, you know what? I feel like that's a question I probably should know the answer to myself. I've just temporarily forgotten. That's so stupid.
I mean, maybe hold that space, and when I know what the temple is, I'll do some more research. That's what I'll do.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so into the temple. Yeah.
So this idea that somehow you could fix a problem, with iron and prayer. And it is also obviously has tangible sort of military connotations as well because it's being done by the dictator.
Right.
So there's this odd sense coming through that we're potentially in this early period of the dictatorship.
Right.
Like many things in Rome, nothing is necessarily just political. Everything is bound up in ritual process as well and the relationship with the gods.
Yeah.
And the dictator is no different from anybody else in that regard.
True.
In having to make sure that the gods are appeased.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all magistrates, there's always those religious connotations to their role and things that they have to carry out in a religious capacity, even though they're not holding like a priesthood or something. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
That's the only detail.
No, I like it. I really like it. And I'm keen to hear more about the temple. All right. So does that mean we can pass now into 434?
434.
Okay, 434 BCE. What do we got, Dr. G? Who's the magistrate? Magistrate, sir.
Well, in the spirit of things being complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion.
There's a lot of people involved this year. So, it's 434 BCE.
Yes.
I'd love to tell you that Dionysius Halicarnassus has returned to me, but he has not. But we have 2 pairs of consuls.
Mm-hmm.
Awkward times already, frankly. The first pair will be the pair that gives their name to the year.
Mm-hmm.
Weirdly, that's Gaius Julius Ulus, patrician, former consul in 447 and last year, 435.
Yes. Yeah.
And Lucius or Proculus Virginius Tricostus, patrician, consul in 435. If those names don't sound familiar, I don't know if anything ever will.
Well, this is the awkward thing about them being consuls, right? There are some questions about, can people hold the consulship for 2 years in a row? I kind of think they can't. But then again, it is early days in Rome.
It is early days in Rome,
Yeah.
and this seems to be something, like something funny is going on, it seems. For some reason, they carry over. Maybe it's because they've only completed part of their term, and the dictators come in and gone, but it seems odd anyway.
Or maybe it's because of the military situation. Who knows?
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a bit more detail.
Then
Yes,
we have a second pair of
we
consuls.
do have a second pair.
Marcus Manlius Capitolinus Vulso, patrician.
Yeah.
And Quintus Sulpicius, son of Servilius Camerinus Praetextatus,
Ooh.
also a patrician. Then we have some military tribunes with consular power. So this year is it feels like a bit of a train wreck already. 2 sets of consuls and some military tribunes with consular power. And you're like, these guys, they're not doing it for us. Sweep them out. Bring in somebody else. Then we get Servilius Cornelius Cossus,
Ooh.
patrician.
Crossus, yes.
Marcus Manlius Capitolinus Vulso. So seems to transition from being a consul to being a military tribune with consular power.
Naturally.
And also his companion, Quintus Sulpicius Camerinus Praetextatus. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you
There's some
shift?
tomfoolery going on here.
Yeah, why would you shift? It doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to
No.
pretend that this makes sense. If you've got a pair of consuls and it's working, don't change it. If you need a third person, maybe just allocate 1 military tribune with consular power to join the 2 consuls. Why do they have to change their position? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
It gets worse, though.
Yep.
We have a dictator.
Of course. The trifecta. This is the trifecta. 434 BCE. The trifecta.
You can have it all, Rome. You've just got to keep putting people into power.
Yep.
It's Mamercus Aemilius, son of Marcus Mamercinus.
I always hate this name, actually. Yeah.
I don't like it. I mean,
Mamercinus, I think we decided on last time. Yeah.
Mamercinus. Yeah, I guess it. Yeah, I feel like with Latin, it's like, do I
It
go
sounds
for the
very-
hard C or do I go for the
I know,
soft
but it sounds
C?
very hip hop. I agree. Like the hard C is awkward to say, so I prefer Mamercinus, but it sounds like, Mamercinus in the house.
Ooh. A patrician.
Yeah.
They were a military tribune with consular power in 438.
Yes.
Appointed to face the threats of the Faliscans and the Etruscans. And also seems to be the person who limits the censorship to 1.5 years.
Don't spoil my story.
Well, I don't know how it happens, so I'm looking forward to how that comes about. And they appoint Master of the Horse, Ullius Postumius Tubertus. Tubertus.
I hate that name too.
Oh, that's kind of cool. I like it.
No.
It's a bit like
Not a fan.
a patrician.
Sounds like gross potatoes. Anyway. All right, so I do have some detail about this year. Now, once again, Livy is actually telling me a little bit about his source material to try and explain the train wreck that is this list of magistrates that we have here. So, apparently, Dr. G, it is Licinius Macer, or Maker. I mean, hard C, soft C, whatever. He's the one that says there are the same consuls from 435 into 434. So
Okay. So a source that's reasonably closer than Livy is.
yeah, and we know that Livy cites this guy quite a lot. He's obviously someone that Livy relies heavily on. However, we also have Valerius Antias and Quintus Tibero as sources cited.
I did my study on these two.
Yeah.
Because I have nothing for this year.
They say that it is Marcus Manlius and Quintus Sulpicius, and they apparently were drawing on linen rolls for their information. And we have mentioned the linen rolls before. They are literally rolls made of linen
Yeah.
with records of magistrates, etc. on them. But both say that older historians had claimed that these guys were, in fact, military tribunes with consular power.
It's a confusing time.
It really is, yeah. Licinius Macer, he basically apparently is very confident with his version of things. He's just like, this is how it is. No questions. Tubero, however, apparently said that he was uncertain about what was the truth. Like, who were consuls? Were there military tributes with consular power? Who knows? He was a bit more uncertain. Livy, as a result, is also in a total heap right now. Cannot make sense of it. And he says to you, you know what? This all happened a really long time ago. Get off my back.
I'm doing the best that I can with the limited resources I have available to me.
Let's not get caught up in it.
So I think one of the things to keep in mind when we're thinking about Valerius Antius and Aelius Tubero is that we're dealing with other writers from the 1st century BCE. So they're writing a little bit earlier than Livy, but they're writing in the same century as Livy is. So
whereas Mesa
is a little bit earlier than that. And so these two only maybe know quite as much as Livy could possibly find out anyway.
Yes.
And their chances of getting hold of better material is pretty slim.
I guess the thing is, we do know that whilst Livy gives us these little insights into his process, which make him seem like a decent historian, we know that he doesn't often actually leave his home to go and look at source material himself. So I guess it's a question of, we don't really probably know very much about these guys and whether they actually, did they travel around and look at, lists of magistrates? Did they have other things? They're just so fragmentary, it's hard to say.
Yeah, they are fragmentary, and we're not really sure. We have a little bit of detail on them. Valerius Antius is listed as one of the younger annalists, which is quite cute.
Nice.
And he is thought to have only written after 50 BCE.
Right. That is very close to Livy. Yeah.
So, and his work goes from the foundation of the city, the hypothetical, to around about 91, which we have a fragment for.
Okay.
So, covering a good stretch of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, because we've only got him in fragments, he wrote heaps, but we don't have a lot of it.
Yeah.
And he was interested in... Wait for it. He's kind of like one of those sort of military-esque historians. He's super interested in the distribution of troops in the provinces and things like that, and interested in colonies being founded and how omens are navigated.
Right.
So it's all sort of process-driven in a way, is part of his focus.
Yeah, nice.
Which is would be interesting to have more of him.
I was going to say, it sounds like a bit of a loss.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think likewise with Aelius Tubero. So he's a jurist and a historian.
Yes.
And he is the son of Lucius Aelius Tubero, who was also a historian and also a friend of Cicero. So Tubero is mixing in, some interesting circles.
Definitely.
He fought in the army of Pompey at Pharsalus.
Ooh.
Yeah, so, he's got some experience.
And live to tell the tale.
So he dedicates himself ultimately to jurisprudence and historiography.
Okay.
And so this seems to be the thing that really drives his career.
Yeah.
Is being involved as a senator ultimately in Rome, but also publishing works. Some of them judicial in nature, some of them historical in nature. So he has 14 books that we know of, Roman history, from the Punic Wars at the very earliest, it seems. And it seems like he does become a source for others to use as well. But we don't really know the substance of what he was trying to do with that work or what his focus was necessarily.
Okay.
Such is the fragmentary nature of the source.
Well, look, it's comforting to know that Livy was at least using multiple sources and comparing their accounts. So for those of you who think Livy is a bad historian, eat it.
I don't think he's a bad historian. I think he's doing the best he can.
He cops a lot of flack there, you have to admit. Anywho, so to return to what's actually happening outside of...
I'd love to know what's actually happening in this year.
What is actually happening? So the Etruscans are obviously terrified because at the end of the previous year, the Romans have captured Fidenae. The people of Veii are very worried that they might be next on the Romans' list. And I think that's probably a fair assumption. Foreshadowing. Now, this is where the Faliscans come into my story again. Okay, so the Faliscans...
I'll whip out my standard story again.
Look, it could apply here. It could apply here. They're feeling a bit guilty about the fact that they had technically backed out of an alliance. You know, they weren't there in times of need. And the city of Veii and the Faliscans decide to send envoys around to the 12 cities in Etruria. And what they want is they want to have this council proclaimed for all of the people in Etruria at the shrine of Voltumna. Now, the Roman Senate are worried that tensions are going to flare up again, and so they decide that they're going to choose a dictator. Now, that seems a little preemptive. I mean, sure, okay, you can see the Etruscans potentially rallying around.
Shiver my timbers, my bones, something's coming. A dictator.
Yeah, it just seems a little, maybe they're just getting into the habit. It's like a muscle reflex, like,
You know what this needs?
Yeah. And so this is where we get Aemilius coming back into the story, and he chooses Aulus Postumius Tubertus as his master of the horse, as we mentioned. So there we've got our trifecta there. We've mentioned consuls, we've mentioned military tribunes with consular power, and now we've got our dictator. The Romans are putting a lot of energy into getting ready for the war that is to come. And I can kind of, again, understand if there's potential for the Etruscans to unite. It's not just going to be two cities that they're facing. This is a more serious threat, for sure. However, things are not going to quite turn out the way that they were anticipating. It's all going to fizzle out quite quickly, as it would turn out. So, merchants end up reporting that the people of Veii had been refused assistance. So they're not going to help out the people of Veii. Now, presumably, the reason why merchants are involved in this story at all is because if all the cities are meeting together in a council, it might have become the scene for like a fair or like some trading or something like that.
This feels like the first time we've ever heard about merchants being involved in any of these stories, to be honest.
I know, specifically a thing. Anyway, and so their response, the merchants, is that you started this war all on your own. You're going to have to use your own forces and not drag other people into the alliance. Because you know what? When you started the war, you were probably hoping that things were going to go well for you. And you were doing all that on your own, and you're probably going to enjoy that success all by yourself. Now that you're struggling, you want to share it around. You want to share around that struggle. No thank you. You are fair weather friends, and we have no interest in pursuing this with you. You had no contact with us when everything was going well. It's only when you're down on your luck that you want to speak to us now. So it all kind of fizzles out. There's no big Etruscan alliance happening. There is no war coming right at this moment.
But we have a dictator.
We do.
Hurrah!
Now, this is the thing. Mamercus, he feels ripped off.
I didn't get my dictatorship.
Yeah, he wants to do something meaningful with his dictatorship. So he decides, I know, I'll do something that will benefit the city of Rome itself if I can't conquer an external enemy. So this is where he decides the censors are becoming a little worrying. Things need to be cut down to size. Either because they hold too much power or because they hold that power for too long.
How dare they?
I know. So I would like to go into the details about the censorship in a sec, but let's just proceed with the narrative for now. So he summons an assembly, and as the gods have seen fit to take care of Rome's enemies so kindly and made it all come to nothing, he wants to put forward this law that's going to limit the censorship to a year and a half. Not a day more, thank you very much. The law was passed the very next day because the people are like, yes, we are on board with this idea. You're right. We need to limit the term of power.
I wonder what we don't know about the censorship in this early period, because this does seem to come out of almost nowhere.
I agree, and that's why I want to come back to that in a second. After this is passed, Mamercus then lays down his dictatorship. The people are thrilled with him. So thrilled that they walk him back to his door like it's a first date.
Oh.
Everything's going very well. It's all very joy. He's a very popular little chappy. However, there are some people in Rome that are not so happy with the situation. And you'd be right if you guessed that those people are the censors.
I mean, I just got voted in and I thought I was going to have at least, I don't know, more than a year and a half to like go around and do my business.
Yes.
Got to build this building. That's going to take longer than this time.
Yeah, so they're furious. So in response, they remove Mamercus from his tribe.
Oh, unlucky.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they also increased his taxes 8 times over. Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Okay.
Wow, you can limit the power of the censors in some ways, but you didn't think far enough ahead, Mamercus.
So this means that he has lost the right to vote at this point in time.
I was going to say, so if he's removed from his tribe, is he placed into a different tribe?
I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. No, is the short answer. So
does this make him a non-citizen?
Well, it's kind of like a weird limbo land in that he still pays taxes, but he's lost a lot of the political rights that come with that. Gee, it's like being a woman in almost any period in history up until the last 100 years. Anyway.
Maybe we can turn Mamercus into an ally.
Now, Mamercus apparently endures this all very well. I mean, this is quite the blow.
He's clearly rich. 8 times his usual tax rate. Come on. I'd be furious. Leave me alone.
Exactly, yeah. But look, he apparently is like, look, I know where this is coming from. It's coming from a place of hurt and trauma. No, he doesn't say that. But he does understand why he's being targeted this way. So he's just like, I'm going to be zen about it. Now, the patricians come into this story. The patricians are not actually happy with the office of censor being restricted.
Well, of course not. I mean, it's part of their purview.
Exactly.
I mean,
they are the ones that are censors.
I mean, it is weird because he's kind of gone rogue because Mamercus is a patrician himself.
That's the weird part. Exactly.
So there seems to be some sort of factionalization going on here between the ones that get into the censorship and the ones that don't.
Well, I mean, we did talk about him being an ally. Maybe he's one of these weird patricians that, I don't know, believes in equality. Maybe that's why the people like him so much. Not equality, that's too far. No. But you know what I mean. More equality, greater equality. Yeah, getting close, but not too close. Anyway, however, they also are not impressed by the way that the censors have chosen to react to his law being passed.
The patricians as a
the patricians as a group. They're not impressed by Mamercus or the censors. The poor patricians. They just don't like anybody.
You know what? I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed about this, and this.
Yeah. However, they kind of look at it as like a column A, column B situation, a pros and a cons. They're like, look, we know that we're going to be living our lives under the power of the censors for longer than any of us could ever possibly personally hold the office. And that is dangerous. Okay?
What does that mean?
Well, I guess it means that you're always going to be under the power of multiple censors in your life if you live a decent time.
Okay,
right?
but you could only be censor once at the very most.
I feel like that's the implication.
Right.
Or at least if you hold the office, you're only going to hold it for a set amount of time, you know. So I think that's what it's trying to say, basically.
But the legacy of the censorship exceeds those.
Exactly.
The term of the office
I've got
itself.
the exact wording here because it is a little tricky. Livy, well, the translation of Livy anyway, says, since each of them perceived that he should be subjected to the censor for a longer period and more frequently than he should hold the censor's office, they recognize the danger. I think that's what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so they're not fans. The people are completely outraged that Mamercus is being treated this way. And nobody could have stopped them at this point in time from attacking the censors, ripping them limb from limb, except Mamercus himself, of course, who's being very zen.
Yeah.
Now, this is roughly where I think we come to the end of 434 BCE. This is roughly where I thought it might be a good moment to pause and think about this position of censor, because it was actually not that long ago that we were talking about holding the censors for the first time in a while, and yet all of a sudden, here we are.
And it's now time for census reform.
Yeah. Now, as with all the offices that we talk about in this early Republican period, if you ever look up the office of censor, you will see the same thing, which is that the practice varied greatly in the early periods. It's not as set in stone as it will become later on, where they hold it for a limited amount of time, they hold it, this frequently, that sort of thing. So there's definitely some variation happening here. However, the general gist of being a censor, it's not just all about data collection.
Oh. That's a real shame.
Just when you thought we were about to get statistical, we don't.
Is it religious?
Well, the censor's job is to basically overlook the morals of the community, okay? Which is why I think the patricians feel the way that they do about, you know, the potential threat that this position holds. Which is funny because it got created officially because the consuls didn't want to do the paperwork.
Like, I'm sick of this paperwork. Can we create a new position for this bureaucracy?
There's a lesson in there somewhere. Anyway, but basically, yes, at some point, they developed the capacity to censure somebody. I'm trying to over-exaggerate my pronunciation of that so that it's very clear I'm not saying censor. Censure somebody. Okay? The idea being that if they did that, then someone would be removed from their tribe and could potentially, therefore, lose the right to vote because that is how you vote in your tribe. But you still get the incredible pleasure of paying your taxes. Now, this is the situation.
No taxation without representation.
Exactly. But you presumably did something to deserve that punishment. So I guess it's like if we send people to prison, if you look at how historically we've treated criminals, sometimes they lose, you know, certain rights, not just their freedom, but
the censorship functions as a way of policing, essentially, who gets to do what in particular areas of society.
Yes, absolutely. Now, technically speaking, I think you could be placed in another tribe, but if they're obviously removing you from your tribe because you've done something wrong, that is
well, the idea that you could join another tribe, it's not like you should only be in your tribe. Your tribe. So if they remove you from your tribe, your only options are really to go back into your tribe when they agree that it's okay to do so. It's not like you can be like, well, I'm just going to join those guys over there. And they're like, this is not your tribe.
Yes, exactly. So that's what we can see happening here in this situation. I think it's definitely the first case we've come across of this sort of thing happening. Now, eventually, not sure about at this point in time, maybe at this point in time, they also supervised membership of the Senate. So they also police their behaviour and that sort of thing.
This is something that the censors are famous for.
Definitely.
But I'm not sure that we can really confirm one way or the other for this period.
It seems unlikely to me that would be the case, but just mentioning it because, you know, it's part of the office. We might do a special episode on them later on. And they could also take the horse and status from equestrians.
Oh.
Not the ponies.
Don't take Matilda.
I know.
How will I get to battle now?
Not Black Beauty. It's a whole different story. And eventually they will accrue...
No, Mr. Ed, no.
Eventually they're going to accrue even more power where they're involved in kind of business dealings for Rome. So they can also oversee the leasing of revenue-producing public property like lands, forests, and mines. They can also arrange for the collection of revenue. They could sell the right to collect taxes to the publicani, okay, not a popular group of people in Roman society, and do all sorts of things like that. And so they eventually will get all that kind of power. But again, at this point in time, I don't think they have that kind of power, nor does Rome have quite the resources that would require this sort of thing. So this is, I think, a much later part of their role.
Yeah. Well, I think we're seeing the stirrings of what will become this kind of censorship with all of this kind of particular power beginning to come into its fore. Clearly, there's something... The suggestion here is that there's an overstepping of the expectation of what they would do.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's an attempt to curtail that.
Yeah.
And so, and this is generally how rules develop anyway. It's like people do something and you're like, no, not that. We've got to make it. Yeah. And then they put it on a stone being like, not that.
Yes.
And you're like, oh man.
Exactly. Look, I always think if Augustus wanted to get his greedy little paws on the power of a particular office, then they had something going on for it, and this is no exception.
Oh no, the censorship, by the time we get to Augustus, the censorship is an incredibly powerful position.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, what's actually happening here in 434 BCE, it's a little bit more up for grabs, I think.
Yeah, so I'm going to therefore close the curtains on another very confusing, mystifying year in Rome's history. Goodbye, 434. And hello to the partial pick. All right, Dr. G. So the partial pick is where we sum up how Rome's been tracking for the last year or two. They have 5 categories. Each category has 10 golden eagles up for grabs, meaning that they're going to get a score out of a total of
50
yeah,
golden
we can
eagles.
do math.
Oh, look, it's a struggle. I'm in humanities for a reason.
The struggle is real. Okay.
Okay, so Rome. I'm not anticipating a great score, but let's see what happens. First category, military clout.
Well, okay. Actually,
There was that whole siege and sneaky tunnel system.
Yep.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive.
Absolutely.
If you believe such tales.
which I do.
Read it in Livy, it must be true.
Yeah, so look, I think that's got to be what, like a 6 maybe?
Well, I mean, just for the sheer effort involved,
Yeah.
I'd give them an 8.
Okay, fair enough,
it's a
yeah.
like a tunnel system, like a mine under a wall to get into a citadel. Like, that's not easy work while you're keeping up the facade of a real siege at the front of the city.
I know, it does make you wonder, given that people have been very ill with plague recently, how are there so many people that you can divert their attention? Is it just one guy throwing rocks at the wall?
They're flinging the soft leavings that they've created along the way.
Nice. Very elegantly phrased. All right, so we're going to go with... Look, I think 8 might be too much. I think let's go 7.
All right,
Okay,
7.
7
7
all
it
right.
is.
Okay.
Our next category is diplomacy.
Well, as we always say, there's rarely diplomacy when there's warfare in Rome, and I don't think that there is really anything to talk about.
It does seem like everybody was like, don't drag me into your mess. and then there was like, maybe we could limit the powers of the censorship. And they were like, no, we punish you. So it doesn't seem like there's anybody negotiating anything around here.
Not really. So yeah, I'm going to unfortunately give them a 0 for that.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I agree. Our next category is expansion.
No, unfortunately not.
We've expanded our minds.
Well, look, I mean, they have captured Fidenae. This is true. However, Fidenae was technically theirs to begin with.
They had already captured it.
Yes.
They just like a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so look, I'll give them a 1 for recapturing their colony. Okay, yeah.
All right, Virtus. How much of a man are you, ancient Rome? Let's find out together.
Well, I mean, there's some things going on here. I mean, we do have quite a number of dictators to choose from. Does it amount to Virtus, though? This is the question.
Yeah, lots of men in positions of power.
Yeah.
How much Virtus? I mean, it seems like Roman chaos.
It does.
Not virtue.
And look, whilst there are some clever ideas and that sort of thing, I don't know that anything is quite at that level.
But Mercus is quite popular, and I wonder why that might be. And I'm not sure that we've received enough information to be really sure whether it's from
He's
Virtus or
clearly
not.
a class traitor.
I do love a class traitor. Join us on the working class
No,
side.
I have no idea, honestly, what he's up to. And Servilius, the dictator from the previous year, like, he has won an impressive victory, but there's no mention of, like, a triumph or... I mean, like, it's through siege. I don't think the Romans respond as well to siege warfare of that nature, unless you besiege them, capture the city, and whilst you're capturing it, do something badass along the way.
Wow, the requirements are so high.
Well, I don't know. I'm not getting a strong sense that, like, he is being held up as any particular...
Yeah, we're not really sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's a question mark,
Oh.
I think we'll leave it. If in doubt, leave it out.
If it's a maybe, it's a no.
Yeah.
And finally...
Mine rhymed, but whatever.
it's just like online dating. It's the citizen score.
Okay, well, kind of. In the sense that...
I mean, they seem pretty happy with the censorial reforms.
Look, the plague seems to have lifted.
Oh, well, that's good news.
There's the victory with Fidenae, which is good for them, obviously. And then there's also, yes, as you say, the censorship thing and the fact that war didn't happen again. Yeah, like it could have. It could have been really bad. All
The absence of war is a
Well,
huge positive.
They were getting ready for it. All these
That's
Etruscans
true.
were coming for them, and then all of a sudden
They weren't.
They weren't. So, yeah, even though they're mad about the fact that their champion has been treated badly, I don't know that that really affects their quality of life so much. So, I'm going to say maybe like a 3 or a 4, maybe.
I was going to say, on the balance, it's like maybe a 5. I mean, they had to do
Very generous.
They had to do some military work, but they also didn't get invaded by all of Etruria, so
Yeah. Look, why don't we say a 4?
a 4.
A 4.
Okay.
Okay. Well, a significantly better score has eventuated. But mind you, we have been doing 2 years together.
Yeah, they've got chance for redemption when
They
there's
do.
2 years of history on the
They
table.
do. So for these 2 years, Dr. G, we have a total of 12 golden eagles.
Oh.
Well done, Rome. You're still not passing very much.
Still subpar, but there we
Yeah.
are.
And you know what? I think we have fulfilled our promise. I think there was more cheerful stuff in this episode than the last episode. There you go.
We're on the up and up.
We are, indeed.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure, as always, to chat with you,
Thanks,
Dr.
Dr.
Rad.
G. Thanks.
Until next time.
Indeed. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Partial Historians. This episode, we'd like to give a special shout out to Pete and Ian Gorton, who shouted us some coffees using our Ko-fi account. That's right, you can support our show by buying us a coffee with a one-off donation on Ko-fi whenever you feel like it. However, we do of course have a Patreon account as well, and in return for becoming a Patreon, you receive exclusive early access to our special episodes and getting to see us in action in some of our recording sessions. However, we love to see reviews and nice comments on social media, so if all of that's a bit beyond your means, that's completely fine. Or you can do it old school. You can actually tell someone in conversation, just slip it in subtly. Partial Historians, it's a great podcast. It's how Augustus would do it. Master manipulator. Until next time, we are yours in ancient Rome.
Hello, my name is Tom Dinas, and I'm the creator of the Delicious Legacy podcast. Join me to time travel together through food to explore archaeogastronomical mysteries, unknown herbs, and long-lost recipes. I will take you to the lavish feasts of ancient Greece, all the way through to ancient China, and in the kitchens of kings in medieval Europe. Who made the first cheese and why? How beer was made? What is garum, silphium, and can I find these now? Through the accounts of ancient writers and talking to experts over dinner, we find out. So, subscribe or follow now wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Google and Spotify, and listen for free at the Delicious Legacy podcast.